So Descartes thinks that because of God's perfect nature, it seems to entail, just because we know that God by definition is perfect, that God must exist. We might worry about this, and here's a famous objection called the perfect island objection. And so see if this is what you were thinking, if you find this a little bit shady. We might think that Descartes' proof also proved that every other perfect thing that we might think about exists too. So imagine two perfect islands, two candidate perfect islands, A and B. This is just like what we did with God. So they're both, whatever it takes to be a perfect island, they both have all of it. Lovely beaches and sunny weather and mansion and boats and all that good stuff. Except A doesn't exist and B does. So which one is more perfect? Well, of course B is, right? If we agreed with Descartes above, then we'll agree with him here too. It's more perfect to exist than not to exist. Does this mean, though, that Island B, perfect Island B, actually exists? Well, of course not, right? We can go out and search the world and we won't find any absolutely 100% perfect island. So it seems like it didn't work in this case, even though this seems very analogous to Descartes' proof for God. Does this sink the original proof for God's existence? I don't know. You might say that there's something special, there's something really seriously perfect about God in a different way than Descartes stated about something like an island or anything different. Again, this is something worth discussing on the discussion boards for this week. So Descartes thinks now that he's proven that God exists. So what happens now? Of course, you still may or may not agree with him, but here's what he thinks is entailed. He's proven that the perfect Catholic God must exist, and this is the sort of God who is both benevolent enough not to deceive us and strong enough to stop something like an evil demon from doing so. On this basis, then, Descartes thinks he can forget about at least most of his worries about false beliefs, like the dreaming example and the evil demon. Why? Because God wouldn't let Descartes be deceived about anything that he clearly and distinctly perceives. Remember, we talked about clear and distinct perception at the beginning of the lectures today. Remember, clear and distinct perception is a special kind, such that anything that you clearly and distinctly perceive can't be false. And this is the case only if there's a benevolent, powerful God preventing a demon from tricking you. Now, clear and distinct perception is different from basic sense perception, of course, in that, if I look out my window right now, and I sort of see something fuzzy in the distance, right, that's not clear and distinct, because I can't be absolutely sure that, say, there's a car way off a mile away. Clear and distinct perception is different, right? In the same way that Descartes can clearly and distinctly perceive that he's thinking, right? There's no doubt about it. So this does still mean that we're not quite sure about our senses, and maybe we could still be dreaming, right? But at least we're not sort of systematically deceived by an evil demon or something like that. So this is sort of part of what he says in Meditation 6. So let's talk about what we can take away from Descartes. We sort of went through this experiment, and he thinks now that we can trust anything that we clearly and distinctly perceive. And it ends up this includes most things. Not basic sense perception, but most of the time if we sort of go through a rigorous scientific process, then we can be okay. He did this using just the single proof of his own existence based on thinking. This, in turn, served as a foundation for him proving that God exists, and he thinks on the basis of finding that God exists, therefore, we can trust most of our perception. So now we're pretty much okay. So should we be skeptical? Descartes will say only about things that have an obvious way of deceiving us, about questionable sense data, about things that obviously seem funny like dreams, about poorly designed scientific experiments, things like that, but not by things like evil demons. So ultimately, he's given us some interesting reasons to doubt what we think we know, and an interesting method to check on it. At the end of the day, Descartes is not going to be a skeptic, right? He's not going to say we just can't be sure. He's going to say, look, we can be sure most of the time. It's going to be fine. So that's Descartes. He's famously known as the father of modern philosophy, and the Meditations are in large part why. These have really revolutionized the way that we do philosophy in the modern day. We'll see some more possible proofs of God's existence next week. And then we'll see some of Descartes' contemporaries and followers later. They will deal with many of these same sorts of issues and also some other ones. So I hope that this has given you plenty to think about for this week, and that there's lots to talk about in the forums, and I will be sure to talk with you there.